Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us today. My name is Stephanie Barrows. I am a health and medical coach here at Seed with Welwyn, and I will be your host today. I've got the lovely Peter Jacobs chatting with us today, who is our cognitive behavioural hypnotherapist here at Seed. He's actually in our Welwyn and St Albans team as well, and I'm really looking forward to for him to just share all that he does with you. Hi, Peter.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, thank you. Definitely melting on this hot day.
Yes, it's a deep breath type of day.
It
It's so warm.
is. Okay, so should we get straight into getting to know you a little bit then, Peter?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so first question for you is I understand that what you do now is very different from your previous kind of career background. So just explain to the listeners, what is it that you do? What is cognitive behavioral hypnotherapy? And what is your story? How did you get there?
Yeah, I've had a bit of a journey to get to this point. I've had two seemingly different careers, which led me here. But they are intertwined in a weird way. So, I am a cognitive behavioral hypnotherapy and coach, but I've come from a media marketing type background. So, for a good 10, 12 years, I worked in a global media agency where I run lots of media campaigns, marketing campaigns with global brands, ran teams, very much a corporate role, corporate life. Um, and I was in marketing because I liked the idea of storytelling, creativity, tapping into how people respond to messages, how they respond to their own thoughts, their behaviors. Um, and I soon realized when I was doing that role, I was actually getting the most enjoyment from working with teams, trying to help people improve, trying to help people get better in their own jobs. Um, and kind of COVID happened, life happened, and I thought it's time for a change. So I took that into retraining. And I've done hypnotherapy myself before, and it worked extremely well for me. So I thought, let's look into this in a bit more detail. Um, and happily, it coincided and linked up with a lot of other things that I've done in the past. So I studied Stoicism. I lived in Asia and a real Buddhist part of Thailand um, for a year, just under a year and a half. Very much lived a Buddhist lifestyle. And when I was learning about hypnotherapy and CBT, there's massive overlaps with these things to do with what you can control, being quite calm, trying to relax. And so it led me down this path of training to become a hypnotherapist and a CBT therapist. And ultimately now that's evolved to me offering CBT, hypnotherapy, coaching in a sense of trying to help people put these things into action a little bit more. And also, I have a sports hypnosis qualification. So I help athletes, amateur sports people to improve their performance, mostly get out of their own way, trying to let the flow state happen when you're on a golf course or a pitch or you're running or cycling, whatever the sport may be. But essentially, I try and help people get away from any kind of anxieties, blockers that they may have.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so lovely, like listening to what you do and how it's evolving as well, And I think, especially in sport, it's so integral. The mindset is so integral. So I love that you're kind of almost going down that path. But I think in life as well, it's so nice when things, when you like, we all have life experience, don't we? But when we start seeing it all starting to come together and those pieces that are like of ourselves really kind of all coming together into what we choose to do. And I think it's really
Yeah.
brave as well because there is lots of people who continue, we pick a job at 18, say, like, let's go with the majority and stereotyping here, but we go to school,
Mm.
we pick a job, and that's what we go into. And then we're kind of expected then to be happy with that for the rest of our lives. But we change, I think it's really brave when I hear how people have stepped outside and gone, actually, this is no longer serving me and
Mm.
trying to work out how the next 10, 20 years looks, you know, we are humans and we evolve and we like change and things that
Mm.
are different and excitement. And I think to, you know, to be able to step outside and create that for yourself is really, really powerful. So well done. It's really lovely to kind of hear your story and your journey. So kind of just giving us a little bit more background on actually what is cognitive behavioral hypnotherapy as well. You know, we hear a lot of kind of CBT thrown around and hypnotherapy,
Mm.
you know, so how do kind of CBT and hypnosis and coaching work together for you?
Yeah, so they're a lovely blend actually, because CBT provides the techniques to help change people's thought processes. It helps to challenge any negative thoughts that they may have. It's kind of like the map of the brain and how we think and behave, really. We are all expectation machines in the sense of we're cognitively always predicting what's going to happen next. Sometimes we predict positively, sometimes we predict negatively, and that's all to do with your lived experience. And a lot of anxieties, a lot of our problems come from when we're expecting negative things consistently. And we get in this loop where you expect something and therefore it's more likely to happen, or you see it or perceive it in that way. You perceive things that may not be a problem as a problem. And then as soon as that happens, your behavior might change. You might become anxious. You might tense up. And then your cognitions start coming. Here we go again. This is a dangerous or fearful situation. I need to get out from it. I need to escape, whatever it may be. And we go on this loop, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point. So CBT helps us understand this. It helps us to challenge it. And where hypnotherapy comes in is that you mentally rehearse it. So you mentally rehearse in a really relaxed, calm state of mind how you want to behave in these certain situations, how you want to be when an anxiety or a phobia or an addiction comes up. Could you pretend in your mind, could you picture yourself behaving in a more positive, more helpful manner? And because you are in a calm, relaxed state, you can't be anxious and calm at the same time. So essentially, by strongly visualizing yourself in that scenario and replacing it with a more calm, relaxed response, a more positive response, you start to build neuroplasticity. So you start to build neurological pathways, which help you break this cycle of a negative loop. So when you start to envisage yourself in this situation, you actually behave well, you behave how you want to. When you expect that situation next time, you're far more likely to behave in the way that you want to. So that's how CBT and the hypnotherapy come together. The coaching side of it is just helping put it into action. So it helps people, I help people stay accountable. I help people move from that kind of first level of what do I do? How do I actually turn this into action? Into an action plan, and then we meet regularly to make it happen. And that's true of sports hypnosis as well. So, sports hypnosis actually brings in another element of hypnosis called active alert hypnosis, because when you're on the golf course, for example, you're not going to have me next to you asking you to calm down and picture yourself in a relaxed environment. So it's all about getting into as close to a flow state as possible. We've all been in that flow state doing something, whether it's sports, a hobby, arts, crafts, music, whatever it may be, where you're you're not in your own way and you just let it all transpire. And active alert hypnosis is the process of trying to build that into your routine. So it could be running when you're tying up your shoes to head out and go on a run. On a golf course, it could be when you're picking your club out the bag. You go into this process where you have a number of things that we would hit to make sure that you're in the right frame of mind to perform as best as you possibly can. And that normally goes hand in hand with being calm enough. to perform how you want to perform. So it's what I do is a combination of things that all come together to help you change your mindset, essentially.
It's really interesting because I work a lot with this sort of stuff as well, but I feel like you're really in tune with the subconscious mind, which is such a, like you say, is a key thing, especially when it comes to neuroplasticity as well, and rewiring how we think. But this, you mentioned expectations as well, and I think that is something that so many of us have on ourselves, whether we put it on ourselves or whether it comes from society or whatever it is. But when there is that expectation that things are going to go wrong, and it becomes a almost there's almost that kind of conflict within ourselves, isn't there? Because it becomes almost a protection element as well. So your
Yeah.
body almost kind of preempts it so that you can protect yourself from the impact of what that might do. And so it's a really hard thing to try and rewire, and it has so many different layers, as you will know as
Mm.
well as a coach. But it's so interesting because it manifests, I find, so differently for everybody. So it's really great work that can have years worth of layers and all sorts of stuff mixed up in it, that does take quite a lot of work. But if you are somebody who whoever's listening, if you are someone whoever finds that you're kind of almost preparing yourself for the worst all the time and expecting the worst, or even I find sometimes people say things like was it when they kind of go oh no, I don't want to jinx it, I'm not going to jinx
Yeah.
it. It's that kind of almost like, because they feel like if they do that, then it's almost that step of preparation for the worst.
Yeah.
It's definitely something worth working on, because it can show up in your life in so many different ways, as you will know as well. And especially if you are in sport, it's sometimes those things that creep in from the background that
Mm.
you don't even realize are there, and it's that subconscious mind and being able to tap into that. So what you do is just such great work. So obviously you've mentioned about sport. Do you work with any kind of specific individuals or specific issues outside of the sport as well, or like men, or is there anyone you kind of see as your perfect client or niche client?
Yeah. As I touched upon earlier, coming from a corporate background and the rat race, if you want to call it that, I understand the pressures there. I've lived it. Um, the pressures of having a large team, of having global clients, of having targets, of having to play the game, as it were, because everyone has to when you're in that type of environment. Um, so I've got a good knowledge of that. I have a good understanding. So one of the areas that I do focus on is trying to help people in their careers. That could be people who have got burnout, who have got excess stress, who don't feel like they're in control of their careers anymore. There's so many elements of what we do, of our work stresses that we take home with us every day, that I find there isn't enough support for that, because it's not quite as extreme as, need to go to a GP and get clinical advice. But at the same time, if you wake up thinking about work, or thinking about an email, or thinking about an argument that you might have at work, that's not healthy for you. That's not conducive of having a happy environment or a happy relationship with work. So whilst you wouldn't say these are areas where most people wouldn't think, oh, I must get help. There is help out there to help you improve your relationship with work, to help you have a more healthy work-life balance. So I'd like to help people who are kind of stuck or unhappy with their relationship with work in some shape or form. That's someone who I found a lot of success with, because I can resonate with the issues that they're facing. And it's something which I've lived as well. So I do have first-hand experience. That's certainly one kind of profile of a client that I like working with. The others are, and this is kind of quite broad, but someone who's got a blocker in some way, and that can be an anxiety, that can be low confidence, social anxiety. That comes up an awful lot, and social anxiety is often masquerading as something different. Social anxiety can show itself as public speaking, being concerned about public speaking or um, fear of flying. Things like this are often showing themselves as these problems, but they're social anxieties deep down. So I really like helping people with social anxieties because it kind of opens up the rest of their lives. You know, we come into work on one thing, and by the time we finish working together, they're more confident in all areas of their life because they're not carrying around this burden anymore. Um, so that's another area. And then hypnotherapy is just really powerful for stress, for habits, for certain phobias, for some addictions, not all. Um, but these areas where people are blocked in some type of way, that's who I love helping alongside all of the sports work as well.
Yeah, it's great. You've got a whole array of people, really, isn't it? And I think the whole
Yeah.
world these days is struggling with stress and burnout. And like you said, like you might just be feeling waking up in the morning and just not feeling right or not feeling excited about life or anything.
Yeah.
But the way that stress manifests in our body, at some point down the line, it could be a GP or a clinical, and that's the reality of stress, isn't it? And the way that we
Yeah.
carry it and the way that it manifests in our life can cause us problems. So if you are recognizing that there is some issues in your life that you could be, or challenges that you could be working on, it's definitely worth not waiting and just getting on and just going for it, isn't it?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know, well, Val, we are spoiled with the therapists, the doctors, and all the specialists that we have in the network, and it's brilliant because I can refer people who I think is, slightly um, who need extra support. I kind of see myself as the first line of defense, as it were, for people who are not at that level where they might need some clinician help because if you catch it early, then you can solve a lot of things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You mentioned there, obviously, I know you've mentioned a few times now about kind of phobias. You said certain addictions that you can work with and anxieties. Just give us a little bit of a kind of brief summary on how does what you do actually help these individuals? Because I know that a lot of people look for
Mm.
hypnotherapy when it comes to phobias and addictions. So how does it help?
When you are when you have a phobia, let's start there. Let's start with a spider. And because we're in the UK, we're extremely lucky that we have nothing that is actually going to hurt us. But we don't see it like that, do we? We've been at some shape or form, we've been told that spiders are scary, and we know there's certain spiders in parts of the world which can be extremely dangerous. So it's hard, kind of, we've been told by society and we've been told almost instinctively that spiders are scary and to be avoided. Um, Whereas the reality is that they're not in the UK. They're not going to harm us, um, and they are of no real danger to anyone in the UK. So it's an area where there is a cognition, there's a thought, there's a belief, there's an expectation, which is just not helpful for us. There is no reason for us to be worried about spiders over here. So why should you carry that around with you? Why should you carry that feeling of being scared? So that's where the CBT comes into it, kind of challenging your beliefs to say, actually, are these realistic? Are they helpful? Um, are they even true? And then the hypnotherapy part of it is all around, okay, well, if you did see the spider, how would you want to react? And it's a sliding scale. When you go through sessions with hypnotherapy, you'll start at kind of baseline anxiety of, I've seen a spider and I'm worried about it, all the way up to holding the spider. Would you be okay if you had a spider on you? And it all comes down to essentially exposure therapy. There's many brilliant people who talk about exposure therapy. Donald Michael Bauer is probably the most prominent in my realm, but it's one of the most proven therapies to work in a number of different scenarios for a number of different triggers. So hypnotherapy essentially a form of exposure therapy because you are putting yourself mentally in that situation. You're exposing yourself to whatever anxiety or phobia you may have. So you get used to it. Avoidance is the main reason why anxiety and phobias keep coming up. So in that regard, it's a form of exposure therapy which is proven to work. When it comes to addictions or habits, as I say, there's certain addictions where there might be some chemicals involved in the body, so the body is actually addicted to that chemicals. There's drugs, alcohol, and things like that, which hypnotherapy can work in some places, but not all. I wouldn't thoroughly recommend it for that. Um, More addictions like nail biting and things like that, where there's going to be a trigger situation. It could be social anxiety, it could be boredom, it could be that whenever you sit on that corner of the sofa at 8 o'clock at night, oh, I'm going to start chewing my fingers or something like that. That is where those habits, those addictions, we try and unearth why you're behaving in this way, and then try and change that pattern, which I spoke about earlier. That loop of you're in a trigger situation, so therefore my behavior does this. I have this emotion, and I have these thoughts. But hypnotherapy interrupts that. Um, so it's all around what the prominent situation and how it's showing up. And that's where we work on either a CBT route, a hypnotherapy route, to try and readdress the balance.
Yeah. Oh, it's so interesting listening to you. And I think, again, that word expectations, beliefs come up, and that idea of kind of exposure, it just shows that when the brain, whenever we're thinking stuff, doesn't necessarily, we always say it doesn't necessarily know what's real and what's not.
Mm.
If you're thinking it can become real. So it's about using the power of the mind, isn't it, to be able to rewire as well, and using that body in conjunction with. So yeah, it's really powerful
Yeah.
stuff, and it's really nice to kind of hear what you do and how it all works. So if we was to kind of take a typical session with you, just so that
Mm.
our listeners would know a little bit more, I would say what happens in a typical session with you, and what might surprise people about the way that you work.
Yeah. So hypnotherapy in particular is very misunderstood, or certainly what I do is misunderstood. Um, I'm not Darren Brown or Paul McKenna or a stage show hypnotist where, right, you're under and you're in a trance. That's not what I do. Um, so I think that would naturally surprise people that actually what I do is more of a guide. Um, there is nothing that I can say or do in a hypnotherapy session to make someone behave how they don't want to behave. They are fully conscious, aware. They will reject anything that they don't like. They have full autonomy, full control. All it is getting into a very relaxed, calm state, and then focusing your attention on these situations where the issues arise. So it's in an ideal scenario, we get into a state where, similar to just before you fall asleep, when you're kind of lying in bed at night and you're still awake, but you're almost watching a film in your head. That's where we want to get to. So it might surprise people that they don't. All I ask of them is to pay attention and just try and follow what I say. I think that always surprises people. Um, the other thing that I think surprises people that I get asked all the time, oh, do you think I'm susceptible? Do you think it would work on me? And it's an interesting question because there are levels of susceptibility. Um, because if someone says you can't hypnotize me, that means naturally they're not going to listen to what I'm asking them to do. So yeah, you're right. It's like the old Henry Ford quote: "The person who believes they can do it aright, and the person who believes they can't do it aright." It's the same thing. So if you come into this with an openness just to see if it works for you, then it will work. That's very much how I've seen it. So what actually happens in a session is, especially the first one, would be talking about how whatever situation, whatever trigger or anxiety or phobia, however this shows up for them. Where does it show up? How frequently? Or what levels are we talking about here? And we might sketch out a few scenarios where you might be at 50% anxiety, 75% anxiety, 100% anxiety. And throughout the sessions, we will work on bringing those down. The key thing for a first session for me is to understand what's going on and try and understand why. But from a client's point of view, is I always need to leave the first session with a goal. The client, that's very much what the client wants. Is it to be able to stand in front of the team next week and do the client presentation? Is it to go to your golf championship this weekend and be able to not be nervous on the first tee? The client will very much dictate the goal. And that is what I want to extract from the first session. From there, I'll work backwards on a plan to make sure we can hit those points. So it's a collaborative process. The client is fully active, involved at all points. It's not me doing something to them. It's teamwork.
I think that's the way that, that's the way that wellness works, isn't it?
Mm,
What you
yeah.
put in, you get out, really. And you're absolutely right when it comes to, like, if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. The mindset is so, so powerful. And I've seen it so many times in my life as well. When someone comes into something with the mindset of this isn't going to work, 9 times out of 10, it isn't going to work, because you've already decided that. If you can be open, you can embrace it, you can receive it, then the mind can be a really incredibly powerful thing. And it's
Mm,
and sometimes people feel so out of control, but they have so much more control than they actually realize. And
yeah,
that's what can come out in our sessions, which I think is really powerful. um
completely. It's you've touched upon something there, which from my personal, when I was learning this, um, I struggled with this concept at first, but now I absolutely love it. I've always saw myself as a rational person, very rational, make considered decisions, um, and I believe in being realistic, not being away with the fairies and not being overly negative, just being realistic. Um, and that does work. That is still extremely helpful. But there's this idea that if you can be, why not be irrationally optimistic?
yeah,
Would it make your life better if you were irrationally optimistic, where you believe that something's going to happen, even though, it's unlikely? Wouldn't that be a more healthy attitude to hold, to have, to walk around with, if you just feel that life is on your side rather than life is against you or
yeah,
life is passive towards you? And that is something which I've seen take shape and really help people and help myself as well. Because, like I say, it's all good being rational and realistic. I would always suggest that is the right thing to do, but allow yourself to be optimistic as well. Allow yourself to believe that you can do things that you might not necessarily have done before, because having that attitude, having that expectation is only going to help you in the long run.
absolutely. And it's having that control. I think sometimes when people think about control and that kind of protective element of life
Mm.
happening, is they almost are fighting with this need to try and control everything. And the reality is you can't control everything. You can't control life. You can't control what happens outside of it. But you can have some element of control if you want it, over how you feel, how you respond, how you think, etc. And that can be incredibly powerful. And it tends to be what you look for, isn't it? And like you said, like positively optimistic, like it is sometimes a choice. I remember we're having a conversation. I'm completely going off on a tangent here, but we're having a nice conversation anyway. But I remember kind of having a chat with my son when we were going to school, and he was really struggling at that time, and he was constantly focused on all the negative things that were going to happen. And I was trying to explain to him about how you will see what you focus on, and if you look for more joy, you will see more joy. If you look for the negative, you're going to have more negative. And the way that I kind of did this with him was, we were driving to school one day, and I said to him, can you just count for me the red cars? And so he counted the red cars. And then when we got to school, I said to him, how many white cars did you see? And he was like, Well, I didn't see any white cars. I wasn't focused on the white cars. And I was like, that's my point. You will see what you focus on and you will get more of what you focus on as well. So if you can be a little bit more positive and a bit more optimistic and maybe, like we say, think I can, you're going to get more of that. You're not going to stop
Mm.
what's going to happen around you. You're not going to stop life happening. You're not going to stop,
Yeah.
whatever it is that might come, or that person didn't hit the deadline, it's affected you. You can't stop any of that. But you can you can control how you see things and what you actually focus on, and then how that impacts on you. And that, I think, is
Yeah.
what sometimes people need to kind of almost make that disconnect from life, but also connection with self. So yeah.
Yeah. I love that example. That's brilliant.
Yeah, it's a great one to use with kids, I find. Okay, so just give us briefly, because I know you've touched a lot on this already throughout the conversation, but people are going to be getting so much from you on this call. How do you support somebody who's stuck? Like, you've obviously spoken a little bit about the mindset, but if you had somebody who had a real specific block and was completely stuck, how do you work with that? How do you support someone?
Being stuck is interesting, because broadly, I find there's two camps of people. There's the camp of people who are stuck because they don't know what to do next. They they don't know the issue that they're facing, and so they need someone just to talk them through where they might be going wrong, where there might be a problem, and try and unlock that. So for the people who don't know what they don't know, as it were, um, it's all about stripping away. As I spoke about earlier, a fear of flying might actually be social anxiety because you're not actually scared of um, a disaster happening or claustrophobia. It's about you don't want to have a panic attack, or you don't want to look silly because you don't know where you're going. These are things that I've seen show up. So for someone who doesn't know what they don't know, it's very much okay. Let's strip this down and find out, what are you actually feeling? What is the actual emotion here? Because the first emotion is normally anxiety, but is it fear? Can we get down a bit? Can we find out what's going on and where it's going on? That's the first thing. And from there, you get to the root cause. And the reason why I love hypnotherapy is because it's forward facing. You're taking action. So we spend time to unlock and find out what's going on and why and how. And there's so many brilliant therapies which are available on Welval who will help you do that extremely well to find out the root cause. Hypnotherapy is different in the regards that quite a lot of the time we're focusing, well, how do you want to react? Now we know what this is. Let's really get that into that situation, into that environment where you feel most exposed. And then let's work on how you want to respond. So it's forward facing. So that first group of people who don't know what they don't know, it's about stripping it right back. The second group of people, who I'm finding a little bit more common actually nowadays, because of the nature of social media, because of the nature of society and culture, and the improving and evolving attitudes towards mental health. Um, there's lots of people who have tried lots of things. They've tried meditation, they've tried breath work, they've tried stoicism, they've tried Buddhism, they've tried gratitude, and they've probably found it helps in all areas, but it's not stuck forever. It's not become part of their habit. It's not become part of their mindset. So all of these things have people have probably tried them once or twice and gone, oh, okay, that's quite cool, but it's not part of who they are. It's not part of their identity, their day-to-day routine. Um, these people are very interesting to work with because they're not stuck in terms of knowledge. They probably know that doing X, Y, and Z will help them, but they're not putting it into action. So they're stuck because it's not transforming into behaviors, into positive habits. So what these people need slightly more is, okay, well, let's make more of a plan for you to do these more healthier habits, for you to behave in the way you want to behave. And that's where hypnotherapy again comes into it, because that there is an element there of all of those things. I always do a slight breath work to start the session to relax the mind and body. Stoicism is all about how you respond, how you only control what you control. So all of these little things become a tapestry to making a plan for someone. So that feeling stuck for me comes in two different camps, and how you attack it is slightly different, but there is a way to unlock both of them.
Yeah, that's great. I think what I definitely take from that is feeling stuck could be pretty big. And
Yeah,
there's so many different layers, and it shows up for everybody in such different ways. And it really is about working individually to strip that away and see what that actually is and what that means and how that impacts and how you move forward from there. So
yeah,
really.
exactly.
So if you was to give a couple of tips for our listeners to take away from today's session, what would you kind of give as a couple of practice tips that you could help them to start to take control of their own mindset?
Mm. The most simple thing that you can do, and I said simple, not easy, because it's for a lot of people it's hard. Notice your thoughts. It's the first step to a lot of control, a lot of improved cognitions. So if you are able to not follow that loop, which I've mentioned a few times, where you have a negative thought and then you have impacts your behavior, you become tense, you become anxious, you might frown, and then the emotion comes in, the anxiety comes, and you start having more thoughts about being anxious or fearful or something bad's going to happen. If you can kind of interrupt that loop and go, I'm having this feeling, I notice I'm having this feeling, or I'm having this thought that I'm going to um, X, Y, and Z is going to happen, which is bad. Just having that awareness of your own thoughts is huge. So that would be my number one thing if people could do. Um, they will feel more in control. They might to feel that, oh, maybe I'm not my thoughts. Maybe I'm the consciousness behind my thoughts, whatever that looks like for certain people. Um, but number one would be, yeah, can you take a step back and kind of name that loop? Oh, I'm having that loop of anxiety or fear of phobias, whatever it may be. Um, that would be the first one. And then the second one would be, okay, you've now probably, if you are able to name that loop and spot it, could you rehearse behaving in a better way? So rather than imagining standing up in front of the office and doing that presentation and people aren't listening and you're boring and you stumble over your words and you see it all go wrong and you feel it and you're worried it's going wrong, why don't you practice it going right? Why don't you practice it, rehearse it in your head where you absolutely nail it? Why don't you speak it into existence in your head, almost say, throw yourself forward and say, "Oh, remember that time I did the presentation? I absolutely nailed it, and it was excellent." So you're talking as if it was fact in your brain, because as you said earlier, sometimes the brain responds that an imagined scenario and a real scenario, it can't tell the difference. And especially if you speak in factual way, you you're reintroducing, you're reinforcing a positive cognition. So that they would be two tips I would say, kind of spotting it, and then if you can, rehearsing in a more positive way.
Yeah, it's so good. So I think it's absolute key, and that's what I always say. First step is always awareness, awareness of
Mm.
yourself and what's going on. And the fast-paced world that we live in, the reality is that quite often we're just reacting all of the time. We're feeling an
Mm.
emotion, we're reacting, we're living from up here, and people aren't aware. They aren't aware of what the trigger is, what the feeling is, what the emotion is, what the belief is behind it. And there is so much behind everything that we do, isn't there? Everything we think, feel, behave, there is so much behind it. So just that
Yeah.
awareness can and also if you take a moment to just be aware, it will give you a moment of time as well, which sometimes gives people enough to just choose differently on what they do next.
Yeah.
I always find really, really powerful. So thank you so much for sharing that. I always like to ask this question because obviously, as wellness practitioners ourselves, we always like to make sure that we are, practicing what we're preaching. But also that what we do, we're very passionate about helping people, and that means that we give a lot of ourselves to others as well. So you are, I know that you are a dad, you have a young family, you're building a business, and sometimes all of this can be really highly demanding. So I'd love to
Yeah.
ask you, how do you manage to maintain your own well-being through, difficult and demanding times as well that come with business and family?
Yeah. Um, I'm not perfect. Who is?
Who is
Um,
absolutely.
I like to remind myself that I'm lucky to be in this situation. I try and have gratitude to have an amazing family, amazing support, um, and try and do the basics. Like if it's true of pretty much everything. I think if you can do the basics right, then you can't go too far away from being successful in the sense of sometimes sleep can be a struggle with a toddler, but try and have healthy sleep routines. I try, get out in the sunshine and walk my dog, get my steps in. I try and eat as well as I can in the time frame that I have. Um, and I try and do self-hypnosis as a form of self-improvement. Um, so I try to just build that in as a practice, a couple of times a week, just to focus on what I want to work on. There's always something, right? There's always something we want to work on and improve. So for me, it's about trying to maximize what I'm doing at that time. There is a time for work, there's a time for family, there's a time to be with my wife, and it's all. I try and do that to the maximum I can each time I do those things. So for me, it's been invested in what I'm doing at that moment, and just try and do the basics well because realistically, I'm never going to have a perfect week where everything's is amazing and I've managed to do my 2 hours of meditation a day and be a dad and write that blog post and all of those things. So it's about just doing enough of all the right things.
Yeah, it's so important, isn't it? And I think that when you are somebody who loves to help people, that's your passion, that's what you do in life. It is something that you have to actively choose to do is to look after yourself and to do the things that you need to do. And like you say the word try a lot,
Mm,
because it has to be active because when you are
mm,
someone who is like ourselves, you often are so used to putting others ahead of yourself as well. And so it's important to constantly remind yourself. But one thing you did say, which I really, really love, you said about being in the moment. I think it is just that presence. And it's something that we lack so much of in this world, because it's so fast paced and there's always the next thing to be thinking about, or the dinner for the kids, or the this or the that, or,
yeah.
and it is sometimes there is so much power in just being present in the moment. It's something that I have struggled with my whole life. And
Yeah.
it's something that I have to actively try. But the joy that comes from just being able to be present is just it's can be it's an incredible place to start, I think, as well.
Oh,
So
completely agree with you. It's always um it's habits, isn't it? Especially in the modern world where you have notifications going off, everything's dinging at you, you have messages as soon as you leave the house, advertising, blah blah blah. Um, it's just there's a lot of noise. So if you can fight that noise and take back control a little bit, even just for a moment, you do feel a bit better. Leave your phone at home when you go on a dog walk, for example. You don't need to have a podcast in about self-improvement to do the dishes. All of these types of things, it's, just just do what you need to do at that moment without any external noise, and you'll find little moments of peace by
yeah,
doing that.
absolutely. I find that so important and powerful as well. Thank you so much for chatting with me
Thank
today.
you.
It's been really lovely to have a conversation with you, and we're definitely massively aligned. So it's always nice when you get people that you bounce off as well. So for anyone that is listening that would love to, get in contact with you and have a chat with you, do you do like discovery calls and things to start off with? Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
would you just tell people where they can find you as well?
Definitely. So if you go onto my website, www.peterjacobs.co.uk, I've got more information about what I do, how I do it. Um, I offer a 20-minute free consultation call where we can just have a chat and find out what's going on, and you can ask any questions you want. Is it the right fit for you? All of these types of things. And then I try and be as flexible as possible to what the client would like. So I offer online services and in-person services, and we can do packages of 4 sessions, 6 sessions, 8 sessions, or just go one to one, and keep it as open and as flexible as possible. So um, there's plenty of more information on my site and on my Instagram, which again, Peter Jacobs Hypnotherapy. Um, and I'm always open to talking to people about things. That's what the free phone call's there for, so people can just chat and see if there's a good match between us.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. And you can also find Peter as well at wellval.com/practitioners/Peter hyphen Jacobs as well. Always a bit of a mouthful, that one. But you can also kind of see lots of stuff that we do there as well. So thank you so much again, Peter, for chatting with me this
Thank
morning.
you.
And thank you for listening, everyone. And we will see you on the next one.
Thanks very much.
Bye.